creators, like, they don't even have a man themselves, but yet they're telling you how to not be single, but they themselves can't even take their own advice.
Made it. Tuadior, yeah, you on fire, did 100 days, something that you can't ignore, all these songs are more, slaying this.
In regards to the content of Shera7 and Ashley Dalton, I kind of feel like there's a lot of divisiveness about whether these advices are viral, because they're known for telling women, specifically Black women, like how to level up in terms of like hypergamy, in terms of like how they get guys, how they like can elevate it. And it comes from an advice where it focuses more on how you present. And yes, they do talk about other things like how you're supposed to move through it and stuff like that. And femininity advice is not something that's like new to like the internet. Like in the internet, they have done quite a bit of femininity advice. It has been a thing. It is a lucrative niche in terms of if you can say the right things and have the right look, you will kind of elevate in this space. And I think that a lot of women do. I know Ashley Dalton, she tends to bring like women on live, looks put together. So people want to, emulate her. They want to kind of level up. They kind of want to do that. For me personally, I've seen some of her live takes. I think that the advice that she gives is pretty okay. I don't think it's anything that is too crazy, but I do see how certain people could be offended by it, specifically if you don't have the means. And I think a lot of it comes from this idea that, well, some of us just don't have the time to make our hair done or like get our nails done and things like that. And I know that if you did have the means, I don't think you would find her content offensive. That's the first thing. And so there's a lot of divisiveness on, a lot of people do agree that their content is very helpful. Maybe with Shera7, she might get a little more hate. But I think for me, my biggest gripe with a lot of these femininity channels is this idea of the blind leading the blind. And I'm going to say this because I know it's going to be very divisive, but I feel like when it comes to dating is a sore spot for many women, specifically. It's a soft spot. It's a sensitive topic because there's a lot of things that go into it, a lot of understanding guys, understanding you. It's just a lot going on. And there's a lot of advice on social media. There's a lot of people, but I tend to feel like it's a lot of the blind leading the blind. And the reason why I say that is because when you look at some of these femininity creators, even here on YouTube and stuff like that, I find it very odd how like, it's like, they kind of have to, they can be elusive. They're this like big sister, ominous figure, right? You usually don't really know too much about their personal life. And I feel like that's kind of weird. If you're giving me dating advice, I never see any of these femininity, with the exception of Shera7, in a relationship. Have you always noticed that they always appear like, no, you never see them with a man. You never see them boot up. You don't see them married. You don't see them this. And I'm not saying that other creators are not married. Maybe it's not public knowledge, but like you never really see a lot of these femininity creators in relationships. Like some of them are, but like most of them are like usually single. And it's always, if you ask them, well, why don't you have somebody? It's, I'm in my healing journey. Like, girl, like that, oh, the girl just has to have a wig on and some makeup and a nice body and you just believe her? Is that like what it is? Because like for me, I'm more likely to believe somebody that's in a committed, happy relationship that I can see, rather than believing somebody who I don't even know, like, been with somebody, right? Like there's a lot of this like blind leading the blind type of notion, especially in the female dating space, where there's a lot of women that will say, this how you do it, this how you do it, but like you don't even know if they have a man themselves. And I feel like that's something that as viewers and as consumers of content, you should be very mindful of, is that if they're telling you all of this, but yet you don't see them with a man, and I'm not just talking about the two creators that I mentioned in the beginning, I'm talking about like anyone who's giving you dating advice on the internet, I feel like you should take it with a grain of salt unless you can see that they actually have a man. What I actually think that and I alluded to this in one of my most recent uploads, is that I think that we really need, at least in the dating space, is success stories. I feel like we're always seeing the worst things, and I get it, the climate is trash. I experience it too myself. But we need more success stories. Like, for example, people who were in their single season for a very long time and then all of a sudden, they got somebody. I feel like that's more useful because I feel like that's where everyone's at. I feel like, yes, there are some people, because if you go on TikTok or you go on this, you see the constant same dating stories about people constantly making the same mistakes over and over and over again. We've already told you, don't go to his house, told you that, but people still keep making that same mistake every single day. So it just makes me feel like when it comes to dating content online, I just want to, like, it's either like you're chronically single or you're in a relationship. Like that middle phase is like always like so much information, and it's so hard to weed out. And what these femininity creators are trying to do is trying to help, and I do see that some of their advice is helpful, but you have to take it with a grain of salt because, for example, when it comes to the hypergamy part about dating a rich man, it means different to different things. But if you live in an area that you don't have access to wealthy people, like you're like going to a hotel bar is not going to help you. I'm sorry, sis. Like, it's just not going to help you because like, you might get somebody that might, pay your dinner for you, but you're not going to get like your person from that kind of stuff. For example, like if you live in a hood area, you're only going to have access to like hood rich people. You're not going to get access to like the wealthy people because you're just not in proximity to them. A lot of the most wealthiest people in the world, like that marry wealthy people, they had a connection that was putting them in certain spaces where they could meet that kind of person. Some ways that some other people do it is like going to university. Not everybody goes to university to get an education. And I feel like if you only go to university to get an education, you're scamming yourself. That's my take. And I've already talked about this in a video in the past, but I feel like college is a time for you to really build yourself. And it's not just through education, it's through connections. You could be going to school with the next big leader in the world or the next big innovator in the world. So it's a time for you to get connected with people and really learn about people, because I feel like when you're out of college, it's kind of harder because you're like, everyone's like working and stuff like that. So those are some factors that work against most regular girls, is that you're not in proximity to those really kind of think about what you really truly want and elevate your way through that. And it's not just getting cute and going to a hotel bar. That's not that. It's really thinking about being intentional about where you're going. But I don't even think, if I talk to people who are actually in relationships, most of the time they didn't really do too much to find somebody. Like they weren't like out here like saying, I must find a guy every single day. They, were in a break, or they were just like, living their lives. And then they, happened to talk to somebody and they went from there. But it was not a situation where they were like actively looking for somebody. Anyone who's in a current relationship now, I never heard them say that they were like doing everything to find somebody. They might have been on apps, but they were not like, or they weren't just going places just to find somebody, And I feel like some of the advice can be misconstrued in that way. I think that when it comes to at least femininity advice, looks are important. I really do believe that they are important, but I've said over and over again that I feel like there's more to it. And if you cannot use your looks into the right way, you will still end up, in a low vibrational. The advice that we have online, we should pick and choose what applies to us. I don't think that everything applies to everybody, because not everybody has access to the best place. Sometimes you could be living in a city that is not for you. Your hometown could be like your downfall, And people like to say, oh, it's not your city, it's you. No, sometimes it is your city. And I know from personal experience, moving cities actually helped me dating wise a lot, because my hometown was just not going to do it for me. Dating advice that we have, it's important for us to really comb through what's important and what applies to us. If, leveling up and making sure that when you leave the house, you have something done is doable for you, do it. But if it's not doable for you and it's not realistic to you, don't feel bad that you can't do that. I think that life happens to people the way it's supposed to, and life will do what it needs to do for you. I think that you should always be evolving and you should always be trying new things, but some people's lifestyle just doesn't allow for them to spend money like that or do too much. But like they say, like, do what you can do. Pick and choose from what you can, because I feel like the advice nowadays is so like hard and telling women to do this and that, but it might not just be realistic for every single girl. Me, I am somebody who I really do like to keep up with my appearance, but it's not for attention, it's not for anything like that. It's literally just so that I feel good about myself and I feel pretty and I feel clean and I feel put together. It's not for anybody else, it's for me personally. But I feel like sometimes the dating advice is like, oh, men are not going to look at you if you look like this, you know? And that is true to some extent, but I just feel like you should always be beautiful for you, because there are things that you're always going to be ugly to somebody and you will never cater to every single man or whatever. You just won't. So I think it's important for you to be beautiful for you. When you look in the mirror, you should feel confident. And some girls need a lot of makeup to feel confident. Some girls don't need as much. And I don't think like we should be shamed into wearing makeup if we don't want to, or we should be shamed to wearing it. Like there are some girls who look better without makeup. There are some girls that look better with makeup. Like you just have to do what works for you. So sometimes when like I know Ashley Dalton was talking about, oh, if you're over the age of 16, you should never leave the house without nothing on, or unless you have like really clear skin. Like I don't agree with things like that. There are girls who look prettier without makeup. It's just a fact. But you need to do what works for you. Don't feel the pressure to be something that you're not, because these ladies on the internet where you don't even know their background and where they're coming from are telling you to do something, I feel. And you should always take every content creator that, especially content creators that you're taking advice from, you should always like, you know, vet them. You should always have an idea of who they truly are, because if you're taking their advice, you know, you need to make sure, hey, you're giving me this advice, is this analogous to what your life is or what you're doing, you know? So I think that femininity content over the years has been questionable, has been, you know, a hot topic, but I think that there are things you can pick up. But I do think that you should take everything with a grain of salt, because the person giving the advice you don't know, right? And they, you know, if you don't even have proof, like, you know, some of these creators, like, they don't even have a man themselves, but yet they're telling you how to not be single, but they themselves can't even take their own advice. And that is because there's so much money in women's insecurities. There's so much money in women being insecure about something, or women struggling with this. And to me, honestly, like I feel like it'd be like a lot of the blind leading the blind, honestly. Like it'd be a lot of blind leading the blind. Like the girls making the content be big single, big not in a relationship, big unmarried, and they're telling you how to get married, or they're telling you how to be in a relationship, talking about I'm in my healing era. No, just as much as you publicly give dating advice, we publicly should know your dating status and why your dating status is the way it is. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. I really, really do love making these videos. I'm back at it again. It's your girl tuadior. And I will catch you guys in the next video.